Hey everyone, my name is Noah Barnett. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Feathr, and today in the studio, like always, I'm joined by Nhu, the curator of the Good Marketing Brief here at Feathr. Hey Nhu, how are you doing?
Hi, Noah. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm going to be honest, I've been doing better, but I'm doing better than I was on Saturday. And so for the listeners, I was telling you prior to the recording that I had to have an emergency appendix removal surgery all of a sudden. I coached my kid's soccer team on Saturday morning. We then had a 13th birthday party for my son. My kid turned 13. That's crazy. I have a teenager now. And then in the middle of that, I was feeling awful. Luckily, have access to an ER really close by, went there, and then had to have surgery. So it's kind of strange to have surgery. I was not expecting that, but I'm on the up and up. I'm in good spirits and on the mend, and grateful for our healthcare professionals, especially the nurses.
They're the
Nurses
best.
do almost all of the heavy lifting. No offense, surgeons, but they made my experience, I was there for about 36 hours total. They made my experience incredible. So shout out to any nurses or healthcare professionals. Grateful for your work, and got to experience that firsthand. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. It's
Yeah,
super scary, I'm sure, but I'm glad to hear that you're on the mend. And it sounds like you're all
yeah,
better.
yeah. No, indeed. And I think, again, it just reminds you that life is crazy. And I think as a marketer, you have to also remind yourself of this, that like the community you're trying to connect with at any given time is going through a trillion random things, right? And so if someone's ignoring your email or not responding on the Thursday you planned your fundraising campaign, or like have to cancel last minute to an event you're hosting, that stinks as a marketer. It's like
Hmm.
people are humans and we just have to kind of expect that that's just going to happen. And as we talked about on a previous brief, that's not an indication that people are ungenerous. They're just unimaginative and really busy. And I experienced this weekend. I had to cancel all my plans. Luckily, my son still had an amazing birthday party. But yeah, we just had to pivot and make
Yeah.
changes and
Hmm.
prioritize. And your community, my community is doing that on a regular basis. So we have to have empathy for
Absolutely.
that embedded in our marketing.
Yeah. Good understanding because, you're right. I think that when we don't get a response, we're like, hello, like, did you not get my email? What's up? But then you realize that they could be going through a health scare, could be a family emergency. Maybe they're just busy with work. So
Yeah,
having that empathy and understanding keeps you in check, as you're
absolutely.
building these relationships.
Yeah. It also, I think, especially at end of year, we've talked the past few weeks on the brief about how do you stand out? There's such competition for attention. And I
Hmm.
think that the other thing I'm reminded too is not only having empathy, that your community is going through a lot of stuff too. They're experiencing the busy and the hustle and the grind just as much as you are. But also, we can't over index on any given activity within marketing. You can't just be like, we're putting all of our eggs in this event basket, or we're going to send these
Hmm.
3 beautifully, highly edited, creative emails and we're going to raise $100,000. Like, we're putting too much kind of like weight on things that, again, the majority of the time are just not seen by our community or could be missed. That doesn't mean people don't want to be involved. That we just have to think more surround sound. How do we stay consistent? How do we stay present in our communities' um, lives, especially during this end of year season, which I feel like is a great segue into our topic for this week. So speaking of that, what was our topic for the Good Marketing Brief this week?
Yeah, so Giving Tuesday, I'll have to stop and apologize really quick. If you hear a faint moaning in the background of a small child, that is my son waking up from his nap. So the nanny's gonna get to it.
Unbelievable. Can they not plan their naps around my schedule? No, I'm just kidding.
Gosh, I'm so sorry.
We
Um,
need predictable sleep patterns.
exactly. And man, my 8 month, he really needs to get it together so he
I
can
know,
adjust to my
unbelievable.
schedule.
I'm going to send them a performance review, you know.
Yeah, I'll hand it to him, don't worry. Yeah, cool. So this week we have more year-end goodness. Giving Tuesday is, I guess, like just over 2 weeks now, which is very real and very scary. But I wanted to just bring it back to the for-profit sector really quick and just understand what they're doing and learn ways that nonprofits can learn from it and see how they can refine their end of year strategies. Right now, I don't know about you, but after October 31st, I suddenly got blasted with Black Friday advertisements. And maybe I'm just noticing it more this year, but I feel like that usually doesn't happen until like late November.
Mm-hmm.
So I dove into that a little bit. I saw some advertisements over the weekend because my husband is an avid football watcher. So all the big advertisements usually play during the big games. So two that I saw this weekend were the Walmart one with when they reunited the the big players from Mean Girls to do a very nostalgic and very millennial targeted ad to, get the Walmart brand out there. And it's really just bringing the cast members together, but in like future day. So they're all like adults and they're like parents and they're shopping and Gretchen is still trying to make fetch happen. And it's funny for me. It was great because it triggered my like teen years of when I loved Mean Girls. And so they did a really good job at emotionally connecting with at least like my age group and kind of attracting them to the brand a little bit. The
Yeah,
other
it
one
makes
that
sense
yeah.
because no, just to jump in here, and I think this is relevant for nonprofits, is nostalgia isn't like just a hot trend, but I think what we are seeing is nostalgia callbacks to things that millennials remember when they were in their youth are really popular because millennials actually have some of the largest control over regular spending habits, especially, for a Walmart customer or Walmart customer base. Millennials actually a huge thing. So how do they kind of reminisce and then reinforce maybe Walmart as an ideal place for them to shop? And we're seeing this across a bunch of different brands, both in media and in consumer brands. Even the Barbie throwback was like also kind of a nostalgia thing.
Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like there's just so many different things that are coming back.
Absolutely.
But also the number or the majority of the workforce today is millennials as well. And so I think as we're even thinking as nonprofits, how do we not only continue to engage the greatest generation and the baby boomers, but as both the majority of working class or working population is millennials and greatest gen and baby boomers continue to pass off their wealth to millennials. Millennials are very quickly going to become a very significant portion of philanthropic and charitable giving.
Yeah,
When maybe 5
absolutely.
to 10 years ago, we were like, oh, they're the future of giving. Now it's like they're on the precipice of being the primary. So I know this isn't the goal of this brief, but thinking about nostalgia as part of our fundraising strategies might be a topic for a future brief.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely something to consider. And especially as, this great wealth transfer happens, the giving behaviors of millennials and baby boomers are significantly different. So making sure you're kind of adapting and adjusting your language to appeal to more the younger generation.
For sure. So I know you said in the brief this week that you feel like Black Friday has now become Black November.
Yes.
And what is the impact of that on nonprofits?
Yeah. So your donors, obviously, they're consumers, like any other time of the day. They're getting blasted by these emails and these communications and these ads from big brands like Walmart, like Target, like Amazon, who have already started kind of getting them primed for the deals that are coming up for the rest of the month, but especially Black Friday. And that begs a question for nonprofits of like, we traditionally have waited closer to Giving Tuesday to actually inform our donors what we're doing. But with the traffic on the web and on their online interactions already starting, it might be a good opportunity to review what you're doing and seeing if it's worth an earlier push so you can get more messaging out, more communication in front of the people that you want, so that you're driving that brand awareness and campaign awareness for end of year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was the biggest takeaway I had from the brief, was not looking at just the last 45 days of the year, the last 30 days of the year, but like, what is the last 60 days? And, we're already 8 days into that time period. But really, how are you creating a consistent drumbeat and connections with your community throughout the next 60 days, even if they all still give, or the majority of giving still happens in that last 3-day period of the year? Giving Tuesday's a little bit of a bump and then it goes there. That's not the only time you want to be communicating, because you want to make sure you stay relevant throughout the next 45, 60 days, not just in those key giving periods, because the prior engagement and the post engagement is going to make sure that those key times, you're going to have higher yield of results.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned Walmart already, where they're trying to kind of take this emotional appeal. You also bring up Coke in this week's brief. What can we learn from Coke? And then how does that roll into some of the other resources that you shared?
Yeah. So I really love this ad. It just, again, it brings back the childhood memories, the nostalgia. I think Coke always has had a long running history by using Santas in their end of year campaigns.
And I think they created the modern image of Santa. I think I read it in a book on branding.
Oh, really?
That the current version of what we depict, like if I said draw Santa to a kid or maybe even to an adult, that current depiction was actually created by Coke through advertising, from my understanding. So cool. Don't quote me on that, but I think that is a marketing by Coke manufacturer of Santa. So Coke has been at this game for a long time.
Yeah. And I mean, watching the ad, it it's gonna sound so cheesy, but I got like a little bit goosebumps because it reminded me of my childhood. So our family growing up we were Coke drinkers. We didn't like Pepsi. So during the holidays, I remember the cans would have the Santa photo, like the painting or like the graphic on there, and I used to get super excited at the end of the year, and I would beg my parents, like, can we get like a new box of like Coke so that I could have the cans, because I would keep them. So as I was watching this, it just triggered just like a lot of emotion for me as like a kid who grew up with Coke. And so they took a little bit of a different direction by being less product centric. Of course, you still see Coke throughout the commercial, but it's really focused on kindness. And the ad is called "The World Needs More Santa." So you can see, so everybody in the ad is a Santa, and it's like everyone's doing something out of goodwill. So holding a door or giving this person the last Coke. And so what this shows me is that it again triggers the emotional appeal and emotional connection for people. And it's just valuable for nonprofits to think about what that connection between your mission and your donors are, and really lean into that. You don't have to do anything super innovative. You don't have to do anything that's like crazy new and fancy, but just knowing what your mission is and knowing what resonates with your audience and really leaning into that.
Absolutely. And I think this is also interesting because some of what is embedded in this ad, you wouldn't necessarily think of as like fundraising strategy, because it's not like that direct ask. It's more of what you might put as like marketing. But I think as we're thinking about our end of year fundraising campaigns, and we talked about this a few weeks ago as well, is you want to have this kind of like emotional story arc that you're taking supporters on. And it really requires marketing and fundraising to work really closely together. And I know you included an interview with Courtney Bulger, and she was previously the chief marketing officer and chief development officer at Piedmont Park. And she talked about this as well. She was overseeing fundraising, but also the marketing, and using best practices for marketing and storytelling as the anchor or the umbrella for your fundraising efforts can just create a more effective experience for your community and connect them more deeply with your cause, and ultimately increase fundraising revenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that conversation. And another podcast that I also featured in the brief was the What the Fundraising podcast with Mallory
Wait,
Erickson.
what the what?
Um, what the
What the what?
fundraising?
What the fundraising? I love that podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all good.
she's great. But she had Crystal Fraser on the episode, in this particular episode, who has been in the fundraising space for a while now and is like a international speaker. I think she's about to release a book. And they really dive into the art of the ask, right? And to challenge fundraisers to think about beyond the ask, because that's not the entire point of fundraising. It's really to build these relationships with donors and get them to feel connected to the mission and want to support the mission through giving, through volunteering, through fundraising. And so what she says is that, as a fundraiser, she's not blind that everyone has a benchmark, right? You have revenue goals that you have to hit. But what was game changing for her is that she stopped focusing on the numbers, right? In short, you have to these numbers, but trying to think about it in the mindset of like, what do I, as a person, as a human, what is about my personality, my value that I can provide, and how can we build this relationship so that people feel more connected to me? And then we can go through the process of getting to know each other, learning more about each other. I can tell them about this mission that we have and the cause that's so important to me, and kind of coax them along as we make this ask.
So we talked about the art of the ask. We talked about the hybrid overlays of fundraising and marketing and kind of the inspiration we can pull from this nostalgia that Coke and Walmart embedded. But then we get really practical. And you shared 2 resources that really outline like a series of steps. The first was a guide by some of our marketing specialists here at Feathr, where they provided 8 tips. So you can find that in the brief. One that stood out to me was that you have to market to the right people. And I talk a lot about this, is that marketing is about the market and then coordinating a set of ings. And too often we do ing market, where we just do a bunch of things toward a market. I think that's even more relevant at end of year. The other resource was Tobes, who we talk about all the time. He's a great partner of Feathr's, brilliant mind in nonprofit marketing. He provided a no panic project plan for December. Can you kind of unpack this a little bit?
Yeah, so I love this because he breaks it down week by week in December. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And he includes channels that you should be kind of targeting, right? He includes top of the funnel, mid funnel, and then bottom of the funnel strategies and channels that you should be reaching out to with your supporters with. But the best part is that while it's super robust and has helped him kind of scale marketing and drive fundraising revenue for year end, wherever you are in the process of your year-end campaign planning, whether it's fully complete and you can just look at this guideline for inspiration, or if year-end has kind of gotten under you and you're kind of like last minute planning, this gives you a template where you can remove or add different strategies to your marketing plan that fits your audience, your needs, and your campaign.
And it's very practical. Like, it's very much like, hey, if you're here, do A, then B, then C. That's what I love about Tobes. He can like zoom up and hang out in the conceptual world at 30,000 feet. And then he's like, okay, we're at the 3-foot level. Let's go. And so it's a great article. Definitely check it out in the brief. And if you're not subscribed to the brief, you can click on the link below in the show notes or in the YouTube description and grab the full Good Marketing Brief from this week. And speaking of last minute planning, you also included a link to some other resources for end of year planning. Could you kind of share what those were and why someone should check them out?
Absolutely. So I shared some other resources from actually your team. I think you guys are doing so much to help nonprofits with end of year marketing. I know you have a webinar coming up next week on exceeding end year goals with good marketing, and you're kind of pulling in a lot of examples of year end campaigns and showcasing all the lessons that were learned and some practical advice that could help nonprofits as they're kind of fine tuning their campaign. And then I did one more resource that was a previously like on-demand webinar that is previously hosted on improving year-end email performance with some of your team members. And on top of that, you can get the year-end toolkit, which has swipe files. It has other on-demand webinars that people can check out for year-end. It has some quick clips from best practices from Chandler and Aaron. And so I think there's just a lot of useful resources that might drive some inspiration for nonprofits as they're about to launch their campaign, or even to go back and check it out as they're iterating on their campaign in December.
Yeah, absolutely. This brief was perfect. It had a little bit of mix of inspiration, a little bit of mix of kind of conversations and kind of guidance from others, but then really practical tips. So if you're in the middle of end of year planning and you want just to kind of calibrate yourself against best practices, definitely check out the link below for the full link to the good marketing brief from this week. And yeah, that's a wrap on this week. What are we looking for? Like, as we transition from end of year planning to end of year execution, where are you thinking, where are you heading with the brief in the coming weeks?
Yeah. So as we get closer to Giving Tuesday and head into December, I understand that nonprofits will probably be ready to launch. They're not going to be changing anything anytime soon. But some of the topics that I kind of want to drive in on are iteration, how to iterate the campaign based on what you're seeing in the data, what the response is like, and how you can kind of be a little bit more strategic in how you're approaching your campaign. And then also A/B testing. I think A/B testing is going to be a big one as you understand how you can test against your results and what tests you should be running.
Excellent. Well, Nhu, as always, we enjoy connecting with you on Fridays here in the studio, and we'll do it again next week.
Sounds good.
And so if you're interested in subscribing to the Good Marketing Brief, feel free to click the link below. And hopefully between now and then, neither of us have any more surprise surgeries or haphazards. But if we do, we just got to stay flexible. But Nhu, always power through. That's kind of the theme of this season right now. It's like, you got to just power through, stay focused, remind ourselves and each other that we're all just humans trying to make the world somewhat better of a place. And so again, look forward to connecting with you next week and following up on the Good Marketing Brief. Until then,
sounds good.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.